Day 15, the final day of our 2-week tour of Cuba was a one-day trip to Havana. Echoes our Havana city work on the first day. The night before, Cuba was hit by a record-breaking storm. Because downtown Havana is low-lying, it was flooded and the water had not fully receded by morning. Consequently, our planned vintage car tour had to be rerouted to the Botanic Garden, which sat on higher ground despite the uncooperative weather. Everyone remained in high spirit. The 1950s and 60s American cars, bright red Cadillacs, pink Chevrolets, light blue Chrysler, and milk white Fords, create a colorful, time-worn, and brilliant landscape that is the most beautiful sight in Havana. These cars are everywhere, yet most are just struggling on their last legs, kept on the road only by constant patching and repairs. Our driver always hurried to open and close the doors for us with extreme care. I suspect that if we close them as we do our own cars, the doors would simply break. On the way to the next attraction, we saw taxis lining up for 1 or 2 kilometers waiting for fuel. Our trip fell at an awkward time. 2 weeks before we departed, Mr. Trump issued a warning to Cuba, making the situation very delicate and tense. Near the end of our trip, around January 29th, he issued a maritime ban. Now, only 2 days after the ban, we are witnessing the consequence. Cuba has run out of petrol. This is the largest cemetery in Latin America, named after Columbus. Though we only saw a small, magnificent portion near the entrance, we witnessed a family funeral where a priest prayed for the deceased. It was a reminder that ashes to ashes, dust to dust, death is also a part of life. On the way to San Carlos Fortress, we passed the famous Prado Boulevard. San Carlos Fortress faces the old town of Havana across the narrow Havana Bay. The fortress offers a panoramic view of the Havana skyline. This is Hoshima, a small fishing village that served as an inspiration for Hemingway's The Old Man and the Sea. In the Fortress Cafe, we warmed up with hot coffee and saw the world's longest cigar, 90 meters long, winding like a water pipe. We watched the massive waves from seaside Prado Boulevard. Today's 15 degrees temperature is considered extremely cold for tropical Cuba. We had lunch at Mojito Restaurant in the heart of Old Havana, known for its authentic vintage atmosphere and live music and mojito cocktail. We tried the national dish Localilla, meaning old clothes. Legend says a poor man once shredded and stewed his old clothes because he has no food, and after prayer, then turned into delicious meat. Aside from the delicious food, the highlight of the lunch was a homeless man across the street from the restaurant who began to dance to the band's live music. He wasn't performing for money, just for his own pleasure. This thing is deeply etched in my memory and has become an everlasting beautiful fragment of this trip to Cuba. Happiness is actually very simple, as long as you want to be happy. When we left the restaurant, one lady in our group who suffers from knee pain joined the man in his dance, following the rhythm. She usually struggles with uphill parts of our tour, but here she was so happy to enjoy a spontaneous dance. Happiness really is that simple. That is likely the true meaning of the travel. To see the world, to know the beings, and to understand ourselves. We visited Floridita, a bar made famous by Hemingway. A quote on the wall reads, "My mojito in La Bodeguita, my daiquiri in Floridita." The place is always packed, with everyone grabbing a daiquiri and taking a photo with the bronze statue of Hemingway sitting quietly in the corner. By the afternoon, the floodwater on Prado Boulevard, the most fashionable street where power and wealth are concentrated, had receded.
Where are you from?
I'm Germany.
Germany. En Cuba y Germany. En La Habana. En Cuba y Germany. En La Habana.
In Havana.
Welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
Happy holiday.
Yeah, thank you.
Hola,
Hola.
bonito paseo.
Havana feels like a time capsule frozen in the 1950s. It's as if a gear in the clock of time got stuck. The clock keeps ticking, but the gear can only click in place, unable to move forward. Vintage cars paraded through, honking their horns as tourists smiled proudly. On the afternoon of the first day of this trip, I watched vintage cars on the Prado Boulevard. On the afternoon of the very last day, I returned here to watch them again. Perfect echo. We reached Havana airport that afternoon. Our flight was delayed until the following morning, but we fortunately made it back to Europe safely. 2 or 3 days after our return, Mr. Trump issued an aviation ban. All tour groups to Cuba were halted, paralyzing the import-dependent island. We likely visited Cuba right before a major historical turning point. If I have the chance to visit Cuba again in my lifetime, I hope to see a different, more prosperous and beautiful Cuba.